Man, it seems like so long ago now that Elon Musk wasn't tweeting about Dogecoin, human malware wasn't a thing, and the GPU market wasn't a horror show of scalping and out-of-stock banners. Damn, I miss it. But while we can't guarantee that elongated muskrat will stop living out his meme coin dreams, or that certain viruses will go away and never come back because science and, facts are just fads, there's a pretty good chance that one day we'll actually be able to afford and find GPUs in stock again. And when that happens, you'll need videos like this one. And that's because in this video, we'll be taking a look at a GPU I've been trying to get my hands on for a very long time now. That's right, AMD's RX 6800, or more specifically, the Asus ROG Strix 6800 Gaming OC. And I'm fully expecting to be blown away by this thing. But first, if you want to pick up any of the parts I'll be mentioning in this video, go ahead and use my Amazon affiliate links in the description down below. Or if you're in South Africa, make sure you're buying all of your tech stuff at Wootware, or else. Now, we're all aware that AMD, or more specifically Radeon, has been struggling to keep up with Nvidia for the last couple of years now, at least when it comes to the balls-to-the-walls ultra-high performance GPUs. And I'll be honest, I didn't think they'd ever be able to catch up again. And then, in true underdog fashion, they totally did with the launch of the 6000 series cards. Cards that just about matched, and in many cases even surpassed the performance of their direct competition from Team Green, especially at the high end. AMD's 6000 series GPUs breathed new life into the GPU market and finally gave Nvidia some legitimate competition to be afraid of again. Even though Nvidia is the king of ray tracing right now, but we'll get to that a little later. And the most interesting of these GPUs, to me at least, has to be the RX 6800. The 6800 sports 60 compute units with 3840 stream processors, 60 ray accelerators, a 250 watt TDP, a massive 16 gigs of GDDR6 memory running at 16 gigabits per second, has a very impressive boost clock of 2.1 gigahertz, and originally launched with an MSRP of $580. The Strix flavor we're working with here bumps that boost clock to just shy of 2.2 gigahertz, and launched at what would have been an eye-watering MSRP of $700. Of course, none of those prices matter anymore, because if you can find this thing selling for under $1,500, that's a friggin' steal. But for the sake of my mental health, let's save the value discussion for later in this video. First, let's see what you'll be getting for the hugely depressing price you'll undoubtedly be paying for this thing. And with this being a Strix card, you'll be getting quite a lot. I've already worked with this generation Strix design a couple of times now, and to say that I was impressed would be an understatement. This card practically exudes premium energy. It's about 3 slots thick and is built like a brick shithouse. There's pretty much no part of this card that feels cheap, flimsy, or fragile, even though the robust shroud does mix in some plastic with all the metal. And to cap it all off, we even have a metal support bracket holding it all together. And that premium touch also makes its way, as it usually does with Strix parts, to the card's internals, where we've got a borderline overbuilt VRM configuration stacked with high-end parts, 2 dedicated PWM fan headers built right into the PCB, and a dual BIOS switch for performance and quiet modes. Speaking of switches, if there was one for the card's overall look, I think it would be very firmly stuck in the sexy mode. I've talked about how much I appreciate the new Strix GPU design for this generation before a couple of times, and I don't know whether it's the fact that this is an AMD GPU, or maybe I just forgot how dope the design actually is, but I appreciate it a hell of a lot more now. The card is absolutely gorgeous. The mix of black plastic and reflective metal on the shroud itself looks aggressive and at the same time kind of refined, with sharp edges, interesting angles, and in-your-face design choices that sets the card apart from every other graphics card from the current and past generations. The card's backplate shares the same general look of the shroud, with shiny and matte surfaces, pronounced features, and an overall air of badassery, all toned down just a little bit because this isn't just, a backplate after all. Another small touch I really like about this particular flavor of Strix design is that instead of having a big obnoxious Radeon logo on the side of the card like we've seen with the RTX cards, ROG decided to have the Radeon branding on the face of the card, where I think it complements the card's general clean aesthetic a heck of a lot more. And speaking of compliments, I have to give my compliments to the RGB chefs who worked on the card's lighting. I think other than one other card from this generation, the Strix cards probably have the most creative implementation of RGB lighting I've seen in a long while. When I first laid eyes on it, I wasn't the biggest fan of the kind of zebra stripe pattern ROG decided to go with, and I'm still not exactly sold on it, but it sure as hell is unique and massive and bright, and I think those far outweigh my distaste for the pattern. The lighting on the 3 fans, on the other hand, isn't nearly as striking. It's there and it does look pretty cool, but it just feels like a bit of an afterthought. It's like ROG was trying to think of how to light up the face of the card, then saw that the light shed from the big light bar was coming onto the fans, and just figured that's probably good enough. But it's not. At least not for me. I would have loved it if ROG was more creative with the lighting on the face of the card, just like they did with like the RGB zebra pattern on the side. But hey, maybe next time, ROG? Along with the aesthetics, I'm also expecting to be impressed by the Strix 6800 OC when it comes to cooling performance, just as I was with the cooling performance of the other current gen Strix cards I've worked with. While the absolutely ginormous heatsink and high performance parts ROG slapped on this thing are already quite impressive, an extra smooth heat spreader and 3 redesigned Axial Tech fans should help push the card's cooling capabilities over the top. The almost all metal backplate, complete with a cutout on the far end of the card to allow air to flow straight through the heatsink, are also nice little cooling touches. Touches we'll be putting to the test right now, because it's benchmark time. For testing, we'll be using a Ryzen 7 3800 XT clocked at 4.5 GHz, socketed into an X570 motherboard, 32 gigs of Crucial's Ballistix RGB memory running at 3600 MHz, Antec's EAG Pro 750W PSU, and Crucial's P5 NVMe drive as our storage. Now, let's kick things off at 1080p. And if there was any doubt that AMD and ROG came to play, then those doubts have just been squashed. The Strix 6800 clobbered all of the cards in the lineup in all but 2 of the games tested, and usually by quite an impressive margin. In fact, the card didn't average lower than 100 FPS across the board at 1080p, and we're talking about high to ultra settings here. Of course, the 6800's lead in some of the titles is very much higher than the others, and the 3070 does trade blows with it a couple of times, but this is still a fantastic result for the 6800. And with the jump to 1440p, we see a continuation of that trend, with the 6800 coming out on top almost across the board. Again, we see the 3070 putting up a decent fight to hold off Team Red Behemoth, but not really managing it, with the 6800 more often than not coming out with a sizable lead. It's here where I wish I had one of Nvidia's brand spanking new RTX 3070 Ti cards to throw into the mix, since at an MSRP of $600, it's the closest competitor to the 6800. And from the reviews I've watched, the 3070 Ti should put up a much tougher fight, just about matching the 6800 on average. At 4K, where each additional frame matters a heck of a lot more than at lower resolutions, the 6800 again flexes its muscles over the 3070, coming out on top in all but one of the games tested. Although we did see the card dip below 60 FPS here in some more graphically intensive titles, with the graphic settings we're using, you'd really need something like a 3080 or 6800 XT to hit and surpass 60 FPS at this resolution. Now, it's time to address the shiny elephant in the room. What about ray tracing performance? Well, for the first time since Nvidia kicked off the ray tracing race, AMD can actually provide some competition here. So this could be very interesting. And well, the results are certainly interesting, with AMD's current gen cards being the first from Team Red to feature hardware specifically built for ray tracing. The results are actually pretty commendable. In games that don't make heavy use of ray tracing, the card performs decently well. However, in titles that support more extensive use of the tech, the card falls disappointingly flat. This is largely due to Nvidia having gotten a bit of a head start on the tech, but also largely comes down to AMD not really having an answer to Nvidia's DLSS just yet. That is set to change with AMD recently announcing their Fidelity FX Super Resolution tech, but the list of games that will support the feature, at least initially, isn't all that exciting. That will of course change too, as the technology improves and developers start implementing it more, but I don't like recommending hardware on the basis of possible future upgrades. If you want a more than passable ray tracing experience right now, then Nvidia is still your best option for the time being. As for rasterization horsepower, the 6800 has a ton of it, and our ROG Strix version here works those horses real hard. The card hit a max core clock of 2262 MHz during testing, with an average clock speed landing around the 2063 MHz mark, and I just have to appreciate how 2 GHz is like pretty much approaching the norm for GPUs nowadays. Sheesh. The card under heavy load drew about 228 watts, which is lower than I expected, and temps were also lower than expected, with the Strix maxing out at 68 degrees under load, with a max hotspot temp of 82 degrees. Impressive temps, especially considering I only ever saw the card hitting a max fan usage of 48% or 1613 RPM. That low max fan speed meant that the card was all but silent under heavy load in a closed case, and barely louder than the rest of the system with the side panel off. As a whole, the RX 6800 OC Strix is an absolute beast of a card, one that in a normal world with normal prices, I'd only be hesitant to recommend because of its $700 MSRP, which I would have recommended spending on an RTX 3080 instead. But since value isn't a thing anymore, if you're looking for one of the best graphics cards you can buy right now, and aren't planning on diving headfirst into the ray tracing settings just yet, then this is absolutely one to keep an eye on as prices start to come down around 2025. But I won't wait till 2025 to end this video, because that's what I'm doing right now. Huge thanks to Asus South Africa for lending me the card to drool over, and thanks to everyone watching. If you want to pick up any of the parts I mentioned in this video, go ahead and do it via my Amazon affiliate links in the description down below, or do it via Whoopware if you're in South Africa. And yeah, I'm gonna go watch South Africa surf that third wave of human malware, and I'll hopefully see you all in the next one. Cheers.